You ever have one of those moments where you're standing there, holding a first-class boarding pass, and the flight attendant looks you up and down like you just wandered in off the street? Yeah, that happened to me. Victoria Reynolds, 38, CEO of a Fortune 500 company, standing frozen in the aisle while a woman named Patricia blocked my way and insisted there had to be some mistake. 20 minutes later, I'd walk back through that same cabin with the weight of every set of eyes on me, only this time, CEO mode was fully activated, and the look on their faces as the truth dawned. Well, let's just say careers ended that day. But let me back up a sec. If you've ever watched someone get treated differently for how they look, hit that like button, because this story isn't just about one flight, it's about turning humiliation into a revolution. I wasn't new to pressure. This particular Thursday was supposed to be routine. Big investors meeting at 9 a.m. in New York, where I'd present our strategy for integrating Luxair, the luxury airline my company had just acquired. Then, by evening, get to Chicago for my daughter Zoe's piano recital, because I'd promised her after missing the last three that this time, Mom would be there. I decided to fly incognito, book a first-class ticket under my own name, not let anyone know who I was. I wanted the real Luxair experience, not some polished act for the new boss. You know what they say about best-laid plans? Just as the meeting wrapped, someone clipped my arm and sent coffee all over my cream suit. I crushed the presentation anyway, but I had to change into jeans and a navy blouse, not exactly power dressing. The minute I walked into the first-class lounge, the stares started. Most folks in there didn't look like me. You could see the curiosity as I handed over my boarding pass, got asked for membership again, the whole routine. Whatever, I was used to it. At the gate, a young guy named Daniel, the agent, looks at my ticket, then my clothes, then back at my ticket, and says, "Are you sure you're in the right line? This is for first-class boarding only." I just smiled, kept my voice even, and said, "As you can see, my boarding pass says 2A. He flips it, checks it again, finally scans it with that look, the one like he's still sure something's not right, but whatever. No es pas just lets me through. But I was just getting started. The minute I step on board, Patricia, the flight attendant, blocks me with her beverage cart, says first class is still boarding, economy starts soon. I hand her my pass. She eyes it, then me, then calls over two more attendants, Keith and Sophia, to double-check. Keith, all business, looks at it like I'm trying to pass a fake ID. Sophia asks if I maybe got a wrong ticket. The other passengers, all white, mostly older men in expensive suits, start to stare, some amused. One in particular, Michael Thompson, leans over and says, "Is there a problem? Some of us would like to get settled before economy crowds the aisles." The implication was clear. I wasn't supposed to be there. I held my ground, provided my license, stood in the aisle while they examined everything loudly. Nobody else was being asked for ID. When the flight manager, Trevor, arrived, he barely addressed me. Instead, asked Patricia what the issue was, like I wasn't even standing there. Eventually, after calling the gate, they let me sit down. No es pas no welcome. Just a cold, have a nice flight. Like they couldn't wait to be rid of me. The show continued once we were airborne. The other first-class passengers got warm towels, drinks, all the smiles, while I got ignored. When I finally asked for water, Patricia slammed the cup down so hard it spilled, didn't even look at me. I started keeping notes, documenting every little slight, not just for myself, but for the company I now owned. As I sat there, watching Keith joke with the men across the aisle, I texted my assistant Grace, told her to pull Luxair's complaint records, focus on anything that smelled like discrimination. Her reply came fast. Turns out, Luxair already had a record. Multiple complaints about this exact crew, all dismissed or buried. Social media posts from black passengers saying the same thing. Subtle hostility, you don't belong, vibes, complaints that never went anywhere. The more I dug, the clearer it became this wasn't just a bad day, it was a pattern. White men in business class reported 90% satisfaction. Black women, barely over 50%. And management knew, but they'd done nothing. Let me tell you, that flight was long. Every time Patricia passed by, I could feel her eyes slide past me, like I wasn't worth the trouble. At one point, she spilled coffee on my paperwork, said a quick sorry, and moved on. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything, and Grace kept sending me more reviews from former employees, internal memos about keeping the right image in first class. I realized, sitting in 2A, that as humiliating as this was, I was one of the only people with enough leverage to actually change something. By the time we landed, I had a plan. I texted Grace, get the full Luxair executive team, HR, legal the works waiting at headquarters. When we hit the gate, Patricia and the others didn't even look at me, certain I was just another mistake they'd never see again. I asked for all their names, calmly, and when Trevor tried to brush me off, Grace appeared at the jetway door with our executive team. The blood drained from the crew's faces as they realized who I was. At HQ, I didn't wait for pleasantries. I laid it all out. Security footage of the differential treatment, a database of formal complaints, evidence of the same behavior repeated over years. Richard, the Luxair CEO, tried to minimize it, said surely one uncomfortable moment didn't warrant all this. Amanda, the COO, tried to suggest my clothes caused the confusion. I countered with photos of white passengers in jeans getting treated like royalty. They tried to push back, but the data didn't lie. The board was called. I showed them how settlement payments have been hidden from shareholders, how their premium experience was quietly costing millions in payouts and bad press. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. One of the flight attendants, Sophia, broke down in front of everyone, admitting that they'd been unofficially instructed to maintain exclusivity. The Luxair image, which everyone in the room now understood, was code for something uglier. Patricia tried to protest, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the board, many of whom had no idea just how deep this ran, started to turn. Within an hour, the vote was called. My reform plan passed by a landslide, and Richard was removed as CEO. Patricia, Keith, Trevor all suspended pending investigation. Sophia, for her honesty, was given a shot at retraining. You'd think that would be the end, but real change? It doesn't happen in one boardroom. Over the next 6 months, we overhauled Luxair from the ground up, anonymous complaint systems, diversity hiring, mandatory bias training. Old customers who didn't like the new direction quietly disappeared. New ones filled their place. And the metrics spoke for themselves. Satisfaction up, complaints down, and most importantly, that service gap between white men and black women shrank to single digits. But the cost was real. I missed Zoe's recital that night again because of the crisis, and the look on her face over FaceTime just about broke me. I found out my own chief strategy officer had been leaking my private messages to Richard's camp, and the backlash online got ugly. There were moments I almost gave in, thought maybe I should compromise, keep the peace for the sake of the company. But then I'd see my mother's photo, Dorothy Reynolds, who scrubbed floors at night, so I could get here and remember her words. If you make it, don't forget to fix the ladder for those behind you. 6 months later, standing at Luxair's new training center, watching a truly diverse group of staff learning how to break the cycle of bias, I realized this fight was never about just me, or even just Luxair. It was about every person who's ever been told, in a dozen subtle ways, that they don't belong, and what happens when one of them finally says, no more. And you know what? I made it to every single one of Zoe's events after that, even if it meant moving mountains. Priorities, right? So here's my question for you. When you see injustice big or small, do you speak up? Or do you stay quiet to keep the peace? Would you have risked your career, your reputation, maybe even your safety, to do what's right? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's talk about where real change comes from. Because sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to be the storm that finally sweeps it clean. If this story hit home, hit that like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs reminding that one person's courage can change the world sometimes. All it takes is refusing to sit quietly in the aisle.